going to jump in, but first I want to introduce the folks that I'm sitting up here with. So these are two of our media clients with Ansira. I will walk you through who they are, give you a quick bio, and we've got some examples of the work that they do with us, because when you say media, I think it's a really broad topic. It's helpful to kind of understand how we've partnered with them and kind of what their brands are doing currently in the space. So we're going to start with Fletcher to my left. So Fletcher is with MGP. You may have also heard of that as Luxco. They have brands like Yellowstone Bourbon and other storied bourbons, rye, tequilas. Since 2021, you were with Luxco since 2014. So you lead strategic development and the execution of brand positioning and communication to strengthen the brand image and expand market share for the entire portfolio, which is really exciting. So welcome. Thank you for being here. Yep. And then we've got Chip down here at the end. So Chip is with Auto Owners Insurance. He's been with them since 2018. You have over 20 years of experience in successful marketing, communications, public relations, creative development, team management, and strategic planning. So welcome, Chip. And again, both media clients here with Ansira, as I mentioned. I'm Catie. So I'm really excited about the work that we do for these clients. We're going to give you a couple of examples. I think it'll be relevant, particularly seeing your poll results. There's a lot of words on this page. We can be a wordy bunch. We're not going to go through all of them, and I'm not going to drain these slides. But if you would like these, we can get them to you, because there's some really fun case studies and ideas here. Ultimately, what we want to talk about here is Yellowstone Bourbon was looking to increase awareness. That's very relevant based on what you all submitted. One of the things that we started doing is we were peppering in both YouTube pre-roll and YouTube TV ad campaigns. We were measuring search results. So as you're going to hear Fletcher talk about, they don't have a traditional we can measure to purchase conversion track. So what we're doing is we're measuring brand awareness, we're measuring overall lift. We saw a 57% relative search lift for Yellowstone Bourbon. You can see some of the stats are on the screen. 52 to 63% relative search lift from males specifically who are a target audience. So that's some of the work that we do from a number standpoint. Let's take a look at some of the creative, because we're measuring multiple types of efforts. One of them is we have a experiential kind of board. You can call it a digital out-of-home board is probably the most relevant term. So that's in a Louisville airport. There's tasting rooms in Louisville on the Bourbon Trail. So for those flying in and they maybe haven't planned the entirety of their trajectory yet, this is a challenger brand. So they may be wanting to visit some of the larger distilleries of who shall not be named on this panel. But we wanted to make sure that they come check out Lux Row Distilleries and know exactly where to go in Kentucky as soon as they land. So again, a great example of, as we talk through different media types today, keeping in mind there are extremely relevant media types that have been around a long time and are now just served in a different manner. This is one of them. So let's take a look at how we measure some of that lift coming up next year. We're going to throw around a lot of large conversations today. We talk about NASCAR a lot with this group, Sunday Ticket, ESPN. A lot of the things that they're currently doing are wrapped around YouTube TV, as I mentioned earlier. We are at a really efficient CPM for them on these brands. So I just wanted you to understand, as we're talking about these, it doesn't mean that you have to have a massive national budget for a brand awareness play. We can get really scrappy depending on your strategy, depending on what your goals are. So we're going to talk more about that today. Let's look at some of the work we do with Auto Owners Insurance, then we'll dive into the questions. So the challenge we have with Auto Owners Insurance is we want to make sure that they've got some A/B testing going. As Chip's going to mention, there was a kind of the same strategy on repeat for a while. So we started to shake things up. We wanted to look at overall conversions and lift, and he's going to talk about what that looks like. So let's give an example of some of the items that we were testing. So this is an in-game. Again, we're in a large brand, so we're in sports. However, it's a really nice way to increase brand awareness for an efficient CPM. We've got cross-channel media activation happening here. You're going to see what that looks like here in a second, because there also is a nice pop-out ad. These are a great way to get in high viewability content for not a large CPM, quite frankly. So there we have it. So thank you. Let's go ahead and take a look at some of the numbers, and then we will jump in. Overall brand lift study, the reason why this is important, as I saw a lot of you mention, cross-channel activation. How do I enhance my digital strategy? How do I make sure there's no waste? This would be the way to do that. So we did a brand lift study with them. As you can see here, across those colored bubbles are all different types of media we tested against display only. We saw an almost four times total lift, and we'll talk about what that means here in just a second. And we're going to dive into the questions. So thank you. All right. So first and foremost, How do each of your companies go to market? Because everyone sitting here today has a little bit of a different way that they need to address their consumer and different levels of consumers. So Fletcher, let's start with you. How does your company go to market?
Yeah, so I wanted to start with that by just kind of explain a little bit more of some of the challenges we face as an alcohol brand. And we have to adhere to a three-tier system. So what that means is, we're the supplier, we make the product, and then we sell it to a distributor who then sells it to a retail account, and then it gets sold to the consumer. So there's a lot of like progression as you kind of go down the chain as far as where that product gets end up to the consumer. It's just starting to come online with spirits, where I think there's 9 states where you can do direct to consumer. So that really hasn't caught on yet. And states like North Dakota and South Dakota, I don't think are big states for us to be doing that. So that's something we're looking at in the future. But right now, it's really pretty much everything that we're selling is at retail. Even e-commerce we've sort of struggled with, where we've tested that before. We've seen consumers just aren't willing to pay this shipping cost for getting a bottle of alcohol when they can just go out to the store and buy it directly there themselves. So, for right now, with our go-to market strategy, that's really who we're selling into first, is really, even though we've got a consumer message and creative, right? That's who we're targeting. That's who we're doing all of our work to go after. We have to sell it into the distributor team first to get that product there on the shelf at retail. Two, on top of that, the company, I think Chip did a good job last session, kind of talked a little bit more of the history of the company. Luxco, which was purchased by MGP back in 2021. But Luxco has been around since 1958. It started as a family-owned company. When I started in 2014, it was very value and mid price point focused on the brands. So, the challenge was, how do we get more consumer-facing brands, right? How do we start to figure out what brands are the right ones to go to market with? And what we do is, we've got a portfolio of over 100 brands and across several different spirit categories, but we really focus on 6. We've narrowed it down to 6 brands that we're putting over 70% of our A&P budget up against. The reason for that is because we're looking at the data that's out there, right? And the 2 spirit categories that are growing right now are bourbon and tequila. So that's where we've narrowed it down to those 2 categories. And then we take a look at, well, what price points are the consumers purchasing right now too? And it's really premium plus, anything that's really $20 or more. So again, we can take all the brands that we have that don't fit into those categories and those price points. We can kind of put that to the wayside, and then we said, okay, we've narrowed it down. Now we know what brands we want to go to market and really support and get behind. So that factors into a lot of our go-to market strategy. I think too, what we were kind of talking about before was, selling into, first our sales team and then to the distributors. We have to have the wow factor that comes into, gaining some attention with the brands. So, we're looking at, again, the right brands at the right price point. What's great about that is that's what consumers are looking for, what we're seeing with the insights, what we're pulling, the sales data that we see, but also it's a benefit for the company because they're the higher margin brands. We're making more money off of that. And that's key at the end of the day.
Perfect. So no,
Right?
no short of challenges. You've got multiple levels of who your actual customer is, from distributors all the way down to the actual consumer.
I think the other thing to add is, you brought it up before, is the challenger brands too, right? That we have. Brands that really don't have a lot of recognition. So that's key for us right now is that push, the building the brand awareness on the brands. We're looking at that from a marketing standpoint. It's more of a long-term play. And then the pull side of it, right? And that's the generate the velocity, create that velocity at retail, that consumer is pulling that bottle off the shelf. And so it's an ebb and flow. It's looking at both of those combined together and how are the marketing, the media, the programs that we're running, what we're doing. Even have Vincent Clark here from a team. He runs our visitor centers experiences that we have for our 2 bourbon distilleries. Really, we're expanding that, see how we can do more. But we've got 2 main facilities in Kentucky, our distilleries that we have, and that's huge too, right? You've got an engagement piece with consumers, an opportunity to drive trial, and so all of this is kind of intertwining with what we're doing.
Perfect. And then you have some similar challenges, Chip, with a little bit of a different brand spin. So why don't you kind of give the group an overall of your brand and how you're going to market now and your overall strategy?
Sure. So similar to Fletcher, we don't sell direct to consumers. We, for the 107 years we've been in business, have worked exclusively with independent agents. So, and they can sell any number of carriers, right? We are a property and casualty carrier. So home, auto, life, business. Our name would suggest that we only sell auto. So that's one of the barriers that we have to overcome with folks, is getting them to understand the full breadth of policies that we can actually sell them. The brilliant move that our founders made is that they focused on the sales force, working with those independent agencies, making sure that they are servicing them as best they can, making sure that they are making writing business as easy as possible. Throughout the years, that's meant introducing technology, right? That's meant taking over some of those administrative tasks that they might not otherwise want to do so that they can focus on sales. It involves doing co-op marketing with them and for them, providing them resources that help them do their job easier so that they can sell on our behalf. Everything we do is focused on people and relationships, and in this case, it's focused on helping them sell us. So we are showing them that we are supporting them so that they feel like when they bring us up amongst the 15 other carriers that people are probably more familiar with, that we stand a chance. And they've done obviously a phenomenal job. We like to say we're number 15. But when you consider that our competition has, $1 billion plus marketing budgets, we're standing out there and on the frontier holding our own pretty well. In fact, throughout this really turbulent market, we've actually been growing. Some instances we've had to turn it down a notch because we want to make sure that we can handle that new business. So up until about the last, dozen or so years, we've actually been rather hesitant to what we would call market directly to consumers. We never want to give agents the impression that we are trying to bypass them. We always want to give the impression that we are supporting them. So there's been a little bit of hesitancy of marketing directly to consumers. So what we've done is we initiated that in the form of sponsorships. Started off with probably a local sponsorship of Michigan State University that's in our backyard. We expanded to some college sports networks. We're on BTN, SEC, more recently the ACC. So that through those sponsorships, we're advertising during games, we're sponsoring shows, but it's not necessarily, hey, come by us, right? It's being a branded presence on those networks. Then in 2016, we started sponsoring a NASCAR driver, and that got us in front of a lot of people all at once, right? We incorporated some hospitality with that so that we could host the agents to those games, and that was all nice and wonderful, and everybody felt good, but we never really had that much reporting, insight, how it was all performing, right? I think our leaders thought it was all kind of nebulous, that it was just, we do this because agents like it, and we do this because we want them to feel supported. We have a long-standing mantra of saying we promote from within, which is fantastic for the more core tasks of insurance, of the underwriters, the claims people, the actuaries, right? The people that actually do the business of insurance. But when it comes to marketing, it's very, as you guys will tout, it's a very specialized experience, specialized knowledge. So working with a company like Ansira that helps us show the results of what we're doing has done an immense amount for us to show the difference between we kind of feel good about this to we are optimizing every single channel that we're working on to make sure that we're getting that ROI. And now that they have seen that we can be accountable, which has been one of my big goals, they are craving even more accountability, which we welcome.
That's fantastic. So you both talked about kind of the complicated ecosystems that you're working in terms of who your customer is. Sometimes they're internal customers, sometimes they're external customers, and obviously the ultimate end customer. Another challenge that we saw in our poll response, and we've talked a lot about actually over the last couple of days, is the continued fragmentation of the media space. I mean, people are not consuming less types of media than they were 10 years ago. They are continuously driving past billboards. They are still consuming audio. They may be consuming it in a different way. They're still consuming video. They're consuming it in multiple different ways. They're still getting their news in the morning, but it may be a morning brew email versus the local news program, or quite frankly, it may be both and sometimes simultaneously, depending on how many devices you have in front of you. If you could give the group an idea, and we can start with you, Fletcher, of how do you look to drive a holistic approach across your media and marketing partners, I think that would be helpful, because it's not just the media space that needs to be
Correct.
coordinated. It's, as you mentioned, your internal on-site, your ECRM, everything you've got going on. So give us an idea there.
Yeah, I'll give a couple different examples. So everybody saw the Yellowstone bourbon data that was up there. That was really, what's interesting was that was a brand we completely relaunched. That was a brand that used to be sold for like $10 a bottle, and I think we were selling 8,000 cases total. And so we completely relaunched the brand with part of our premiumization strategy. We pulled it out of the market, we waited a year, we redid the packaging. It's got a great history and story. I mean, the brand's been around since 1872. Our master distiller, Steve Beam, he's related to the Beam family. Beautiful story behind the brand. And we built the distribution over a couple different years, and it was growing. We saw it growing year over year at a pretty decent rate. And then we got lucky because there's a show that came on TV called Yellowstone that was really, really popular. And the internal discussions with the company went, this is an opportunity to advertise nationally, to get on TV, to get behind this brand. And that was where we came to Ansira with the challenge, and we went, all right, if we've got this opportunity, how are we going to do it? And like you said, I think internally the challenge I faced was, they're like, well, how do we guarantee everybody, it's just going to run, it's going to be on TV, anybody that's got TV and watching the show is going to see this spot, which is about nearly impossible to do these days with it, right? With like you said, how media is consumed and how you buy it and the different streaming networks and everything else. And so that's where the Ansira team really, helped us out. We got the year one buy done, and then it built on top of that, and we were able to keep expanding and put more money behind it because we saw the huge lift, the brand lift that we got in sales from being on that show. It was, if we were growing at 50% year over year, all of a sudden with that advertising that show, all of a sudden now we're going at 126% per year, right? And it showed with the company, it proved, hey, this is important to do the brand awareness, to build the brand awareness on these brands. This is a major opportunity that we have. And so, again, it built excitement with our distributor team, with our sales team, because we're like, we are going to be on national TV during this time period. It gave the ability for the sales team to work with the distributors to get all the point of sale pieces, to get out in the market at retail, to drive displays during this time frame. Everybody was rowing in the same direction internally across all sales and marketing. And so we saw a lot of success from that. When we don't, even if, when we don't do that, we tried to test last year, I think during March Madness, we ran a buy, we didn't have enough time to get all the execution at retail with it. We saw an increase in traffic to the website. The media performed really, really well, but we sort of missed the boat on the sales execution side of it. And that's where we learn on our end, hey, we have to have that. Chip mentioned NASCAR. We just started that this year for our Rebel brand. We were watching, we looked into it for a couple years, and we just felt the driver opportunity wasn't right. But when Kyle Busch switched over to Richard Childress Racing, we were like, well, Kyle and Rebel matches up really, really well. Yes. That's our guy, right? And so sure. I think the overall cost when we looked at it, 5 years ago for Luxco would have been, that's pretty expensive. The company's done really good with giving us increase in A&P budgets year over year. But what was key when I looked at that with the group, and I talked to my group about that, I was like, it's not being on the car. It's not really the exposure through the TV from it. The real opportunity, that's important with the brand awareness that we can get from that. But the big piece was the intellectual property that we got with the sponsorship. It gave us the ability then to use his assets at retail throughout the whole entire year behind the sales team. I mean, the first thing I heard from the sales team when we announced we were doing this partnership, and I knew it was coming, they were like, can we get a life-size cutout of Kyle Busch with his Rebel fire suit on so we can use that at retail? And we're like, absolutely. That's the biggest piece of this deal. So again, that full 360 approach, right? We've got the awareness from the media that we're getting from it. We've got the intellectual property, so we can use that at retail execution, which is huge. So we can get that across the entire country. I mean, there's a race in almost every market. That season runs February through November, so big opportunity there. Influencer side of it, right? Kyle Busch, Richard Childress Racing, his wife Samantha, they have huge followings on social media, and we've got them now to be able to be out there and supporting the brand, right? And help build our audience. So there's a ton that we can do from that, even from social media. Vincent with the distillery, at the visitor center, it created a huge amount of buzz. We had Kyle Busch come in, do a couple single barrel picks, right? We've got the opportunity to build that into innovation. So how we utilize that across everything that we do is huge. It's key. It's why, we need these WOW programs for us, because it's so much more than just the media and the awareness that we're running.
I'm so glad you mentioned NASCAR, because it's as the agency, we see opportunities come across our desk, or we're investigating opportunities. They don't always match our brands and their goals, and that's what we saw with AOI, right? And so Chip, you can jump into that here in a second, but if you just keep with the NASCAR theme, it's a really great fit for where Luxco is right now, and particularly Rebel, but it actually created a disconnect with AOI in terms of racing sponsorship because of things like where it was going, the seasonality versus the non-seasonality. So Chip, I'd love for you to jump in and talk a little bit about your holistic approach and mention your NASCAR experience there.
Yeah, the challenge with that is that, prior to launching our campaign with Ansira, we got very little reporting on brand awareness, and the little that we did was tied to our NASCAR sponsorship. Generally, our unaided brand awareness was between 2 and 3%. Okay? Our aided awareness, even amongst NASCAR fans, was maybe 12 to 15. So you're talking about more than 80% of consumers not knowing who you are when they walk into an insurance agency. Okay? Our marketing initiatives at the time were not necessarily working to help each other. I talked about 80% of our impressions on the college sports networks are garnered between October and the beginning of March, football and basketball season, right? When you have a NASCAR season that starts in February, our sponsorship, we're on 8 races a year. Generally runs April through, we get another race in November, sprinkled out throughout the season. So just as our college sports network presence was starting to decline, that's when our NASCAR presence started to ramp up. Where being a brand on a car is fantastic for reminding people of an already familiar brand. I've seen you somewhere else. I recognize McDonald's. I recognize Pennzoil. I recognize seeing your branding somewhere else. When they see our A on the hood of a car, they have no association with where else they've seen us, right? So that's a huge challenge for us, where we're not getting that reinforcement. They're not working together. So what we were looking for with Ansira is saying, look, we're in the sports space, right? But with our college sports sponsorships, we have no control over which market we're on during any given game, right? We're at the mercy of which teams they get in the selection process for each game. So on any given season, let's say football, you might have Ohio State is usually going to be on ESPN or ABC, right? It's not going to fall to the Big Ten network. You might get them once in September and maybe once in October. So Ohio is only seeing our branding on that network twice randomly throughout the course of the season. That's no way to build a consistent brand message. So we also told them we need to be in the front of the same market on a much more consistent basis. That's when they discovered Home Team Sports for us. Our co-op program has about equal amount of budget as our overall corporate program. So we rely on them very heavily to keep at least a good baseline presence for us in doing what they do. So what we do on a corporate front is we focus on 7 high priority states for us. We don't want to necessarily be pushing in every single state. Some are emerging, some have challenges. We want to make sure we're focusing where we can make the most impact. So we're going to let the co-op dollars take the brunt for some of these states. And those 7 states that we're focusing on, they just so happen to also have really good professional sports followings. So in the first and fourth quarter, we have the NBA and NHL. In the second and third quarter, we have Major League Baseball, right? So what you saw were in-game activations. We run a lot of commercials during those sports broadcasts. They are completely tailored to that team and that market. So in Ohio, we just added the Columbus Blue Jackets. We've got the Cincinnati Reds, other sports programs in there, right? So we're running the ads during the week. You're seeing the in-game activations. We just added for this year in-venue signage. As part of that program, there's a lot of hospitality. We're all about relationships. We were challenged with trying to find new opportunities to take the agents to places where they thought it was really cool and you're whining and dining and making them feel good and developing that relationship, right? This presented a perfect opportunity to do that. In conjunction with all of that, we have a very robust digital campaign also targeted to those 7 states with similar messaging. Our messaging has always been very agent forward. Our first 10 commercials that we produced for our campaign featured agents as de facto spokespeople. They were actors, but they were de facto spokespeople talking about, don't you want a local presence? Don't you want a local expert who's going to be there when you need them, who understands you as an individual, who's going to answer the phone? We did that in part because we wanted them to be utilizing those assets that we developed for the campaign. If we went with the typical P&C insurance carrier concept of going wild and crazy and coming up with celebrity endorsements and using computer animated geckos and stuff, that's not our target audience. We're looking for a little bit more discerning purchaser, a little bit more educated, has more toys, because we found that people have more policies with us the longer they tend to stay. A little bit older tends to get in fewer accidents, right? So they're a little bit more profitable. We're pretty discerning in the type of business that we're trying to build. So our messaging is very specifically tailored to a little bit more discerning audience, that we're gonna be there, we're gonna take care of this for you, as opposed to the person who just thinks, I want the lowest price and I don't want to think about it anymore and I figure I can handle this all myself. It's very much, let us be the experts, let's make sure that you're covered with what you need, and we do it through audio, we do it through video, we do it through digital, and we're with them throughout the course of the day, week, and month, right? But we're also asking a lot of a brand awareness campaign. They need to understand that they can't buy it directly through us, that they need to contact a local agent, that we sell more than just auto insurance, and there's something different, unique, and special about us, is that we're there when you need us, we pay what we owe, and we don't give you a hassle.
And Chip, we talked a lot about driving awareness. We've talked a lot about brand awareness and brand lift studies, but what are some of the KPIs that your team's focused on right now to try to get the between measurement? We've got the brand awareness and the lift. You've got ultimately someone registering for a policy. What are you seeing in between for those in the room that have a similar complicated ecosystem they're trying to measure?
Yeah, we can't tie our campaign directly to sales. There are so many outside factors beyond our control, whether it be weather, inflation, litigation, state policies. There's really a lot that we can't control. So we're looking more at stuff like reach, impressions, click-through rates, optimization, right? Our conversion is actually folks getting to our landing pages. We have different landing pages for our different lines of business. We have buttons on all of those that say find an agent, just in case they happen to be in the funnel. We don't have much control over that either, right? It's an event-triggered purchase. Either you just got married, you just got a new car, you just got a new house, you had a really bad claims experience and you're sick of your current carrier, right? We're an event-triggered, so we're looking more at how are they engaging with our campaign? How many impressions are we generating and how many conversions, although not a primary KPI, that's the one that makes our senior officers feel better about the campaign.
Can I ask a question?
Sure. Yes, you can.
Yeah.
Was that you that said, no, don't focus on sales and focus on these KPIs over here instead? Or did that come from that? Or did you have to go sell that in?
To senior leadership?
Yeah.
that was an education process for our senior leadership. The first, 6 months of the campaign, we were thrilled with how it was performing. But one of the senior officers in our division said, well, let's look at how that's converting to sales, right? Let's see at least what quote production, and we had to let them know there's not going to be a direct correlation. We are not giving 15% off your next policy, right? We can't do stuff like that. This is an awareness campaign. The entire concept of the campaign and messaging of the campaign is built exclusively to educate and build awareness and let them know that we're different, unique, and special, and that they need to contact their local agent. It's not call your agent today to get your quote and get 15% discount, right? It's when the agent brings up auto owners as an option, you have a good feeling about auto owners, and they have embraced that. They recognize that there are different KPIs. We have a sales team that works directly with agents to help drive sales. This is to make that sales pitch easier for them.
Yeah. Fletcher, you guys have a study this year that I think is really relevant to this conversation too. Do you want to jump in on some of the KPIs and what's included there?
Yeah, so, I was saying at the last session too, I like to look at it simplistically like marketing 101, right? You got the push and the pull. So from the push side of it, yeah, it's building brand awareness. And so taking a look at the media, how's that performing? The amount of impressions that we're getting, all the click-through rate, the engagement, how many people we're getting to sign up for the CRM program. There's a lot of different factors that go into that strategy, really that funnel strategy that we have that the Ansira team has helped us build out. So, just looking at the media itself, the performance of it, how efficient it is, how much reach frequency we're getting, all those different KPIs of it, that's stuff that I'm always interested in. Because again, the awareness is more of a longer term strategy with building that over years where we're at. The other side of it too is, if we're not selling more, then we're not going to get the A&P budgets to support the brand. So obviously we're going to have to take a look, and my brand team's, my expectation is, hey, you better know everything that's going on with your media and all those KPIs, but also as well as the brand health too, right? Taking a look at sales performance. How's that doing? What is the one thing we're really looking at now and keying in a lot more is that velocity rate and that trend, right? Because that's really determining that pull at retail. And really, the awareness is just an overall piece of what's helping that, right? That's not causing all of that pull at retail there too. But really the connection between the two, this is what we were talking a lot at the last session, is one thing we started this year with the Ansira team, something that, and I see Jen out there, that we've been talking about for a little while here, for a couple of years, was getting a brand health study started. And to me, that's kind of the connection between the push and the pull side of it, right? Is to get a better litmus test of, well, how are the brands really, how's that consumer looking at that brand, right? How do we measure up against key competition? And so we started this year for Yellowstone and Penelope bourbons, our competitor brands. We've chosen some bigger national brands, really kind of in the same price point, really at the same overall kind of like quality perception there, I think too. Woodford Reserve, Angel's Envy, Basil Hayden's, brands that you can go into almost any store account and find. And what's cool about the brand health study is it's combining 4 different factors: familiarity, which is the awareness of it, consideration, quality, and momentum on there too. So if your brand that's trending up or trending down in that consumer's eyes of it. So 1 month into it, it's some pretty fascinating results. We're seeing, on some of the brands, we were surprised. We're like, hey, our awareness is actually, our overall brand health is better than we expected it to be. But it gives us an idea then, too, of what we need to do to close the gaps against some of those other key competitive brands. Like on quality, on one of the calls, I asked a question. I go, okay, quality is lower on Penelope, which just surprises me because that brand wins a lot of great awards, but it's a newer brand. So maybe that's why, the perception of quality is a little bit low. But we went, well, what could we do to change that? And that's when they said, look, from your media, your creative side of it, we can do more video with pour shots and bottle shots and things like that are showing the liquid to help improve really that quality perception. So I found that interesting. I went, okay, that's where we can use the medium, what we're doing, and with the creative side of it to really help affect that score of what we're learning, that, how that consumer sees that brand.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I know we're standing between these folks and lunch, so we'll do one more question, and then we'll get everybody into the main hallway there. So I'd like you both to share, and we can start with you, Chip. What's a lesson learned that you and your team would want to share with your other marketing peers?
I think our lesson, especially over the last 18 to 24 months, is to be agile with all the various digital marketing tactics that we have. We've been able to pivot our messaging and our budgets from stuff that might be working really well, but that market is really struggling, and we actually want to dial down awareness in that. There are markets where other carriers are really being restrictive in what they'll allow for new policies. And so many carriers have shut down that we become one of the few carriers that's still willing to take on new policies. That's not always a good, profitable thing for us. So one of the few things that we can do is ramp back on our messaging, whether it be budgetarily or on the actual lines of business that we promote. For instance, in Minnesota, and most of the country, frankly, home policies are really struggling. So we have switched off our messaging for home policies in Minnesota, almost exclusively on business right now, right? Other areas of the country are doing better so that we can shift that budgeting to them very quickly. And we can also switch between different tactics and strategies that we're using. If we want to, search has been a fantastic conversion for us. People who are in market for new policies, a lot of people are in market for new policies these days because it's been so volatile. We can ramp back or ramp up in different areas if we want to get more leads. People who are in market are using those search terms, so we know that they're in the funnel for us. So Ansira has done a fantastic job over the last year and a half, 2 years of optimizing the search campaigns for us, really making them work better, changing the messaging on the ads based on our requests of, hey, we need to dial this up, we need to dial this down. And our senior officers are really seeing the flexibility that we can manipulate the campaign at this point, and they appreciate that we are using data, using intelligence to help support their sales efforts.